In this video, we are going to talk about the quasi-experimental design, and it's presented by Wendy Azucena Reyes Lopez and Betsy Yamilet Rivera Pen. The research paradigm of a quasi-experimental design is a quantitative research. Why? Because the quantitative research talk about the nature of data and has variables. And the kind of research is a basic research because the basic research is focused on generating fundamental knowledge and theoretical understanding about basic humans and other natural processes. So the principle of this basic research for the quasi-experimental design is the basic human and the natural processes. The methodology type that has a quasi-experimental design is descriptive. This is because the quasi-experimental design is very observative and observe all the things and aspects of the research. First of all, for understanding quasi-experimental research, I want to try to explain what is a quasi-experimental research. So, it is a type of study characterized in that the study subject is not selected randomly, but is found or established previously, and it is located between an experimental research and observational study. So, the quasi-experimental research, the principal objective is that we are going to select a subject, but we need to establish that subject previously, and we need to be sure that a subject that we want to study is it has the characteristics that we want to investigate. When we are going to use an experimental design, quasi-experimental design, so it is used principle when it's not possible to randomly assign individuals or groups to study, also for impact evaluation that rule out randomization. The principal thing here is that we need to establish a group of study, but we are not going to select it randomly. So in this case, when we are going to research something, we need to be sure that if we need to select a group randomly, you can use other kind of research like the experimental or maybe not experimental. But if you can't use a group randomly, you need to use just quasi-experimental research. What is the purpose of a quasi-experimental design? So the first purpose and the principle is prove the existence of a causal relationship between two or more variables. Something characteristic about this design is that we need to have a variable for the study and for the kind or things that we are going to study. So, for example, the principal variables to use in this design is the independent variable that are one or two groups that we study. And the second variable is the dependent, is the observation over time for any changes that may occur. The characteristics of quasi-experimental research. We have 5 characteristics that represent this design. The first one says the study population of this research is selected by the researchers. So previously establish a group. As I said before, we need to establish the group that we want to study. We need to evaluate what kind of group of people, of individuals, are the correct for complete this research. We need to be select a group that is established previously. And the second one say a quasi-experimental research is of utmost importance for applied research. So the quasi-experimental research is linked by the applied research. And the third characteristic is it emerged to conduct research in the education sector and is now useful for psychology for the purpose of conducting social studies. So the quasi-experimental research appeared first of all in the education sector because this design is principle for the social lives of the people and how the people development in an environment with many in a social environment. So the principal sector that it was involved for this quasi-experimental research was the education sector. But now, currently, we can see that psychology it's other correct area where this kind of design it could be used for our research. Why? Because the psychology also study the conducting social of the people, no? So also the principal purpose for the psychology and also the education is the purpose of the conducting social studies. So the fourth characteristic is it is focused on identifying the way in which an independent variable is related to the dependent variable and what this produces. So we need to select two variables, independent and dependent. They are separated, but at the end we are going to link these two variables. And at the moment of to link these variables, we are going to produce something. We are going to produce a problem or maybe a situation that we want to study and maybe try to resolve. And the last one, say that it is carried out in the field in an environment where the study subject develops naturally. So we need to be sure that the group, the independent variable that we are going to study is developing in a natural environment. So they need to be themselves. They don't need to change or try to play a role. Um, so they need to be sure that they are not going to change something about them. So it's so very important that this design is developed or it is produces in a environment naturally.
My partner has mentioned some very interesting points and some characteristics of this quasi-experimental design. So now we are on the role of the investigator. To know what is the role of the investigator, we need to know what is the role of the members or the participants that are in this experiment. First of all, we need to remember that this type of study, the study subject is not selected randomly, as my partner said, and it is established previously. So he or she, the researcher, is not going to study the first thing he sees. No, he needs to establish or look wide what is his finish point. So to know what is the role of the investigator, well, I want to cite a YouTube channel where I got information from. It is from Fred Alcott, and he explains a lesson by Chris Koss. And well, here it mentions that in a quasi-experimental design, the participants are not randomly assigned, as I mentioned in the beginning, and my partner mentioned as well. 2 experimental groups in a 3-experiment research. Participants have an equal chance of being assigned to any condition of independent variable. The one being manipulated by the researcher, and, well, that is involved in the study. So, for instance, if the researcher was examining the effects of caffeine on reading comprehension, he or she might randomly assign participants to one of three independent variable conditions. Those who drink one soda, those who drink two sodas, or those who drink none of sodas. So then he or she might then assess each person's reading comprehension abilities following the exposure to the independent variable in a tree experiment. Each participant who volunteered would have an equal chance of being assigned to any of the three groups' quasi-experiments. So, which are the quasi-experiments? The quasi-experiments are the cups of soda, 1 cup of soda, 2 cups of soda, 3 cups of soda. So, each of it counts for 1. That are employed when the researcher is interested in independent variables that cannot be randomly assigned. Usually this happens when the dependent variable in question is something that is innate. So, here we notice that the role of the investigator has the important role to look previously what type of person he is going to choose, what are the conditions, what is he looking for, what is his finish point, what is he or she investigating for. So he doesn't have like the role of part of the experiment. He is the observer of the results of what the results of the volunteers that are going to be part of the experiment. So thank you. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now we look forward to the steps to conduct a quasi investigation. So first of all, we need to know that these 4 steps is to lead us to a correctly quasi-experimental investigation. So here we have 4 points, 4 steps. For the first point, we have the selection of the study group. The first step to carry out a quasi-experimental investigation is the selection of the group that we are going to study, and a variable is assigned to them, to the participants. Now, as we mentioned at the beginning, my partner, it is not done randomly, but rather groups are established, such as some examples are hospital workers, university students, etc. For the second point, we have run the study. So let's remember that a quasi-experimental research is based mainly on a descriptive methodology and on the analysis of quantitative and qualitative data. So now we turn ahead to the third point, which is the analysis of the results. In this step, the data analysis consists of identifying the influence of the independent variable on the dependent variables and their consequences. Among the elements that are analyzed and social behaviors. And for the last step, which is the number 4, we have to establish conclusions. So after analyzing the information obtained, it is very important to establish conclusions and present results to interested parts to create strategies that allow the solution of the problem. So now we are going to go ahead with the methods of the quasi-experimental research. And I'm going to present the methods and the advantages and disadvantages of the investigation quasi-experimental. So as my partner mentioned, we have to take into account that to conduct quasi-experimental research properly, it is essential for researchers to select between 2 types of methods that will give meaning to the process. which are divided into, as we mentioned, and cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs. So let's go with the first one, cross-sectional designs. Well, the cross-sectional studies are used to compare different groups at a specific points in time. With this type of design, it is not possible to draw a general conclusion, but instead, a variable is measured at a specific point in time. Now, with the second point, longitudinal designs. Longitudinal research aims to study the changes that the study subject goes through over a continuous period of time. These designs consist of selecting different measures, the variable of each study, or which study each subject, which can be an individual or a group of individuals that form a unit. Now, in the next slide, in advantages, well, first of all, some points is to consider that if you decide to use a quasi-experimental research in your next project, you need to be aware of the advantages and disadvantages. For advantages, among the main advantages of conducting this type of research are 4 points. I'm going to mention 4 points. The first one is to, unlike other types of social research, quasi-experimental research works with groups that are already established and have the necessary characteristics to conduct the study and are also accessible, which facilitates the process. The second point is that this type of research is not very precise. However, it is still possible for research to identify general trends. The third point is quasi-experimental research, unlike other traditional methods, is easy to carry out and does not require the use of many financial resources. And finally, the last point for advantages is that quasi-experimental research can be conducted for both individual and group cases. Now, for the points of disadvantages, well, some of the disadvantages of conducting quasi-experimental research are 4 points, which are the first one, well, is by preventing researchers from random sampling. It is possible that the data collected may be biased. The second point is that researchers have no knowledge of the context of the study subject. This can lead to an inaccurate results and different conclusions. The third point is that sometimes study subjects change their behavior when they learn that they are in a research process. And finally, the last point for disadvantages is that if the process is done correctly and you choose the method that suits your project, you can get great results. So when doing this investigation of quasi-experimental, you need to take into account even advantages with disadvantages, and will choose the best for you.
So now I present this article that it's a clear example about a quasi-experimental design but development in a study of research. So this is a quasi-experimental design to analyze critical thought in a secondary. So if we can see in the second part, in the second page, in the introduction, we can see two paragraphs with a yellow market. But the first paragraph talk and refer about the objective. The objective of this study and the objective that they want to study and try to find a solution It's that the reading comprehension needs to be development in this kind of grade of the secondary school. So in the second paragraph, we have a small sentences, a statement about 2 lines, but it talk and it result stand out very clear the what is the kind of studies that they want to study. So the principal group that they want to study, or maybe the subject of that they want to study, are the students of fourth grade. In this part of the article, we can see that in the first page, talk about how the critical thought it could be development and what are the principal characteristics of a critical thought, and also talk about a divergent talk, critical talk. So in the second page, we can see the applied of the method. So first of all, specify what are the things that researcher try to find in the students, and also we can see how they select the group. No, so we can have a small table that specify what is the context of the investigation. So we also have in the middle a show of informants. So this is the first step of apply a quasi-experimental research, because here we select the group and we establish a variable for that kind of group. So in this case, we divide this group in 2 groups, and the first group is the control group, and the other one are the students that has 16 years old. Sorry, but also they show the experimental group. So here the principal variables of this selection of the individuals for the study. It was a experimental group and a control group. So the age of these students are 16 years old. They are in the grade 4, and the investigators or the researchers, they the principal researcher for this kind of study was the authors of this article, and also with the collaboration of a teacher that participate in this development of the lessons. In this slide, we have the results of the group of control. Here we pass with the step 2, that was the development of this study, and also we have the step 3, because here we make note about all the things that we can see, we can observe. So here, for example, in this article, in this researcher was has a note in a small table that the authors write the results of the students group of control, and also they write the other table for the group of students with the variable experimental. So in this part, in the first page, it talk about what is the development of the study, what was the results, and in on the second page we can see what are the discussion and conclusion. So first of all, the results, and it could be the conclusion that they can get of the study was that the students of the experimental group, they offer a critical thought, while the control group of students, they don't present a critical or a deficient critical thought. So finally, of this article, they discuss these results and go to a conclusion where they decide to try to find a specific method for try to development this critical thought, and it's necessary, they think that it's necessary follow to investigating what is these principal characteristics and problems, and at the end we can try to find a solution of this critical thought on the students of secondary, or maybe the students of high school, for development and have a critical thought.
So this was the presentation for the investigation of quasi experimental. I hope that our presentation has been clear enough and understandable. So if you want to share a comment below, it's welcome. So thank you and have an excellent day.